What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on the Run for Your Sports YouTube channel, talking today's 8-game NBA slate on this Monday afternoon. We got the usual Monday crew here. I'm DC. We got Mangone. We got AP. And AP, I saw you had a nice little score last night in the NBA streets, and I know some other RPS members did even better than that. So congratulations. And hope to keep the momentum rolling today. How you doing on this Monday afternoon?
Yeah, doing really well. Sundays are always fun. Did the show with Mangone. I think we kind of hit the nail on the head. Show went really well. It was actually like both slates. Was live in both slates. Just was a few pieces away from the flagship, and that's what you want. And, yeah, we had some members that absolutely crushed. So shout out to them. Let's run it back today.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do our best to pick the winners on this show. Mangone, how are you doing on this Monday afternoon?
Yeah, I saw AP did pretty good. I feel like we had the right takes, but my just stuff didn't fall the correct way, and it is what it is. I didn't have enough Sam Hauser. We talked about liking him, but I definitely made some adjustments to some of that news. And hey, you can't win every single night. So, but I felt like we set people up, and members did really well. AP crushed. So hopefully we can run it back again. It should be a fun slate. Tonight's interesting, and I mean the rest, like the next month is pretty interesting in general because you're gonna get some crazy stuff. Like I was going through all my 3-max stuff, like kind of the stuff that's we have like injury wise so far, and let me tell you, like we have no idea where it's going to go. So we just gotta wait and see what the news. We'll break down what we can and be ready to adjust. It should be a fun slate, and if you are adjusting, you're gonna be able to take advantage of this time of year.
I gotta say one thing. It was kind of tilting that I missed because it seemed like so I lost. It was a 1v1 pivot. Jalen Johnson versus Franz Wagner. Franz Wagner against Toronto. Jalen Johnson, obviously the night game, who he absolutely nuked. Pairing him with DeJounte Murray. I had that 100 extra, but for some reason I just wasn't looking at Jalen in that specific build. So I was kind of tilted by that, but it is what it is. You move on. I'm just glad at least in RPS, RPS logo is up there at the top. And Mangone, I'm with Binair here. What's going on with the background, man? You got figure skating back there, is that right?
Yeah, the hockey chat really wanted me to have this up. I know the hockey chat loves me, so I wanted to give them some love and put some NFL represented in the background. So, yeah. Have that for now. We'll adjust. We'll adjust. I was thinking maybe putting some March Madness in the background because it's that time of year. Maybe we'll do baseball. Who knows? But it's definitely a great time of year, right? We have like every sport going on. I know, DC, you're going to Vegas coming up here soon. So there's no better time to sign up. There's a million sports going on, pretty much every sport except football. So a lot going on.
Mangone, I got to say one thing. I went in during NBA All-Star break. I went in because I played. I mean, we all play NHL during that, right? And I went in, I had 5 lineups. I had no idea what was going on. And I'm trying to follow in the app. It's like the worst sweat ever. If you don't know what's going on, okay? And I went in there to Hockey Chat and said that, and all of those dudes absolutely destroyed me. So I don't think they like me either. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, hockey guys like their sport. It's like, when I make fun of soccer, I think soccer. Everyone like on these.
DC's over here just cracking up.
Really defends their like.
DC break the tie, or I guess it's not even a tie. Where are you at with NHL?
I also played during the NBA All-Star break and did not have a lot of success in the couple sites. I gave it a try, a couple lineups. I know our hockey people are great. It's kind of like soccer DFS where you got to have the goal scorers, right, to get there. But I mean, come on, this is enough hockey talk. Mangone mentioned.
I will say, DC, I looked at my ROI because I've had some nice hits in hockey. I might as well just quit. I might as well just quit other sports because NHL is like amazing ROI. It's because I don't play it that much, but had some decent binks in it.
Yeah, I'm like you mentioned, I'm off to Vegas tomorrow for fantasy baseball stuff, some big season long drafts. Can't play DFS from there, which of course is not ideal. So I don't know if I'll be on any of the NBA shows the rest of the week. Kind of pointless to be on the shows if you can't play it all. So we'll see on that. And honestly, it's silly season in the NBA right now. And with baseball coming up around the corner, starts next week. The 28th is the kind of the big opening day. My NBA season, at least until the playoffs, is wrapping up a little bit here. Baseball season comes around, and that's like especially in the first month or two when there's all the early games that they do in April. I'll be deep in the baseball street. So, yeah, I don't hate missing the very end of the NBA season. I'll be here, now and again, following the core plays, all that stuff. But in terms of shows, probably just a few left for me. Been a really, really fun season hanging out. And, Alex, I'm doing a couple of NFBC high-stakes draft, including one with our good friend, favorite attorney at law, Mr. CJ Kaltenbach. Got assigned to the same table as him for the big Saturday main event. So looking forward to that. Meeting a lot of friends that I've known online for years, but have never been able to make it out to Vegas for NFBC. Usually the last couple of years, the RPS party has been like right next to the Vegas Strip, and I just can't do both right in a row, man. I can't go straight from the RPS party to Vegas. I just don't know if I could survive, like 8 straight days of that. So I didn't go in the past. So looking forward to getting out there and looking forward to breaking this 8-game slate down. We do got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into it. I don't know if I want to tell strangers on the internet where I'm staying in Vegas. No, I'll be at the garage where most of the NFBC players will be. Don't hunt me down, PSSA 31. All right, first game on the slate, Cleveland and Indiana. Indiana favored by 6.5 in this one. Total sitting at 225. We do have significant injury news on the Cleveland side of the ball. Evan Mobley remains out. Max Strus also out. Donovan Mitchell going to miss this game as well. Dean Wade is doubtful to play. Got to imagine he's going to sit this one out as well. So what is that, 3 or 4 starters, depending on who Cleveland has available, out for this game, including, of course, their most important player, Donovan Mitchell. We'll see Darius Garland, of course, take over the point guard role. He's kind of had a little bit mixed results in this role since Mitchell's been out. It seems like Mitchell's been out, seems like close to a month or the better part of a month at this point. And a high total, obviously. So interesting game here to kick us off, AP. It does look like Indiana should be mostly, if not fully, healthy for this game. We'll start with you, AP. What do you see, Cleveland and Indiana?
Yeah, really interesting spots. So the Pacers, they're still running like a really terrible rotation for DFS. It makes it really tough to, play guys like Haliburton. A lot of that is due to, one, how TJ McConnell's playing off the bench. Rick Carlisle giving him like 18 to 20 minutes on a nightly basis, and he's actually been pretty good. So he's cutting into Haliburton's workload there. And then Siakam, look, when you bring on a guy like Siakam, it's obviously naturally going to take away from, some of the opportunity and production that Haliburton was giving us early on in the season. So, and then it's a pace downgrade for the Pacers side of this. I will say, so there were if you go back almost a month ago, it was like Indiana, I think Rick had them more focused on defense because first half of the season, they were just horrendous defensively. And you saw their pace kind of go down too. A lot of that was correlated with Haliburton being out. You're starting to see those pace stats start trending in the right direction, like what I like to see. Over the last 3 games, they're leading the league, 107 possessions per game. Obviously, there's an OT factored into that too, which I did not take out. But still, even if you take that out, they're still up there as far as possessions per game go. And then on the Cavs side, you have exactly what you want. You're going to have a very tight, limited rotation. Garland, LeVert likely to start here. Niang should slide into the starting lineup. And then, if you look at their bench, they have 2 bigs, Tristan Thompson and Damian Jones. You have Sam Merrill and then Craig Porter. This should be an absolute nut spot that we go heavy on. The problem is we don't have Boston news yet, and that's going to be a really, really good spot. You have, Cade Cunningham and Fontecchio that are both questionable, and then a lot of other news yet to hit later on in the slate. And this is the only game in the early window. So where it stands right now, I don't have any interest on the Pacers side. I think we can comfortably fade it, but I think as far as if you're just trying to start with a safe build to start out, you go with Karis LeVert and then Niang and then kind of move on from there. But I honestly think Garland is in play. You could also play the bench guys like Sam Merrill. He's going to get minutes here. They have to run a tie rotation. They're not going to play Damian Jones and Tristan Thompson a lot of minutes. I don't think they have anyone else unless I'm wrong. Unless they signed Marcus Morris, but it's like not, he hasn't factored in the rotation at all. So I'm curious to see what you guys are doing. I think it might be dumb to just like fade this first game and move on. I think we're going to need some Cav pieces tonight.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think I kind of want one of Garland or LeVert. I don't know if I would necessarily want to play them together, but I'd be surprised if one of those two didn't have a strong game. I do lean Garland for sure in the starting lineup. We'll see if LeVert is in the starting lineup or not. Mango, let's go to you, Cleveland and Indiana. What do you got for us?
Yeah. So I always talk about this. Like, is there a team that we need to target on this slate? Like Indiana is, right? Like we've been targeting them a bunch. I know AP has touched on how they're not a team that are playing as the super fast pace like they used to be, but I still think they are worth targeting, especially when we have a team in the Cleveland Cavaliers that are missing players. And honestly, if Dean Wade misses, who is doubtful, that's a pretty big piece of news. The reason why I kind of call that out is like that dude will soak up 30 minutes and those 30 minutes have to go somewhere else. They're not going to like Tristan Thompson randomly, right? They're going to get allocated out to all these other guys in different ways and mixed and matched. So I think the Dean Wade news is actually a pretty big piece of news. Gorgeous Niang, he is definitely going to be a value at 4.5K that you can consider. Same with Sam Merrill, 4.2. I think he's another value that you have to consider on this slate. I'm curious to see how these values rank versus the values we might get. Because if we don't get a lot of value on this slate, if a lot of these questionable tags just turn into probables, these are going to be some of the better values on the slate. And that's going to reflect in ownership a little bit too. Also, like let's say at 7 o'clock, let's say we still have guys that are questionable. As like lock is approaching. Well, you might get higher ownership on these guys. Well, you might get lower ownership on guys later on. So that's another thing kind of to mention, to think about. I know it's not really giving you an answer of what's for sure going to happen. It's just telling you how to prepare for the slate, because I think this information really matters. Either way, we're going to like these options. I lean liking Karis LeVert a lot here in this spot, especially if he's starting. He has been starting more. Ownership is going to be key on him. If you're telling me he's like a 50 or 60% guy, I might want to be lower on him. He's going to be in that like 30% range. I'll like him a lot more. I think that ownership is going to be really key on someone like Karis LeVert. And then Garland at 7.6, I don't mind him. I think he has a good ceiling, but I think there are better plays that you can get to at that guard position. And then Jared Allen at 8K. Again, I don't hate him. Like, Bigs have been good against the Pacers. My only problem with the Jared Allen plays, I think there's guys in that range that I just prefer right now. Vucevic and Ayton, they're both going to obviously do pretty well. I think Rudy Gobert in the old revenge game against Utah in Utah with no Karl-Anthony Towns now, I think he's really in play. I think Kristaps Porzingis at 7.8K. He is certainly someone that could pop for a very big game, especially if they're missing guys. So that's another thing that we don't really have the information on. Jalen Johnson at 7.5, who we'll get to. We've seen his ceiling before. Against the Lakers, he could definitely do well. So there's just a lot of plays in that range that don't have me like gravitating towards Jared Allen right now. So overall, I think the guys I like the most are probably Karis LeVert, Sam Merrill, and maybe Niang or Okoro, who I should have mentioned. But I think it's clear that it's either Merrill or LeVert are two of my favorites here on the Cleveland side of the ball. The Pacers side of the ball, I agree with a lot of what AP said. I just have a hard time getting into some of these options. Like, sure, if you want to just keep taking chances on a contrarian Halliburton up top, listen, no one is playing him right now. I understand why. But if he's going to be like 3% owned, I mean, he could easily pop off at the price, so I wouldn't hate it. I like what AP said about TJ McConnell. I don't think he is a bad value. I know the minutes aren't great, but if you want to take a chance on it, I think you could. The problem is I don't think we need to take that risk. I think we're going to have enough good value plays where it's not worth it. And one more guy that's probably similar to the McConnell play, where right now I think he's popping, but I don't think he'll be popping later, is Jalen Smith at 4K. Pretty good fantasy producer. I won't call him elite DC, but I'll call him pretty good. And has a matchup that, yeah, it's not the easiest matchup, but when he gets those minutes, he's a solid value for 4K. And it's for 4K. It's a pretty cheap price tag. And if we are struggling for more value, there's not a lot of value at the forward position that we're absolutely in love with right now. I mean, there's good value, like there's okay / good value. There's no elite forward value for me right now.
So can I add one more comment in? Just because I found the rotation that we recently saw, it was on 3-11 against the Suns. The exact same situation. Okoro, Garland, Allen, Yang, LeVert started. Okoro played the most minutes, 39, and you saw Craig Porter play 21 off the bench, Sam Merrill 21 off the bench. So they ran a really tight rotation. The last thing here is if the Cavs keep this close, it could be a really interesting game to kind of what do we call that? The Big T 777, like jam it in. Like this team right now, without all of their pieces, have been horrendous defensively. If you go back to that game, that was the game where Durant and mind you, Phoenix had all their studs. Durant went off for like 60. Booker got there. Beal, I think, had a decent game too. So I don't know. I'm really torn on what to do with this game. It might be a decent spot just to like jam it and, see what happens.
The big part about the slate AP that I noticed, and like these are things I mentioned on my 3 max, I basically said, here's all the questionable guys. Jimmy Butler, Tobias, questionable. Jaylen Brown, Tatum, questionable. Cade, Fontecchio, both starters, questionable. Caruso's questionable. Grant and White are doubtful. Anderson and Gobert are questionable. And then Lauri Markkanen is questionable. There's just a lot of like things that could easily flip the slate quickly based on the news we get. And there's a lot of them where I could see this game either being super high owned or under owned, depending on how things go.
Yeah, of course, a lot of news to come. That is the only game in the early window. Cleveland and Indiana at 7 Eastern time. There are 2 games that lock at 7:30 Eastern time, the first of which is, I think, pretty clearly the most important game on this slate, Detroit and Boston. Boston has all kinds of injury news. Now, I will say, as of right now, they are still favored by 15.5 points in this game over Detroit, total sitting at 222. So we do know from Boston already that Sam Hauser, Drew Holiday, and Al Horford are all already ruled out. We do also know Kristaps Porzingis, who hasn't played, since the 8th, I believe. His last game, the 7th, March 7th, he played. He's been out with a hamstring injury, so he's been out, 11 days. He's going to be back for this game. I haven't seen any minutes limitation on him yet. I think that's information that we could still potentially get with coaches' press conferences prior to the game on Porzingis. I would assume he's basically a full go, but again, don't know that for sure. And then we are also waiting on the news on both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are listed questionable. I would be pretty surprised if they both sat out. And frankly, given that Boston is still listed as a 15.5 point favorite in this game, my guess would be that both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum end up playing, given that Horford, Holiday, and Hauser are already ruled out. That's kind of how Boston does things, right? They kind of take turns sitting out a little bit. I think they're going to be doing that a lot down the stretch. But we'll see. Again, we don't have that news. We should get it, I think, before the first lock on Cleveland and Indiana. And, as we're talking about ownership on this slate, like NBA ownership can just massively, massively swing on just a couple players being ruled in or ruled out. It changes everybody's builds entirely. Other sports aren't really like that, but the NBA, especially this time of year, certainly is. So this game is critical, not just in terms of making lineups, but where the field is going to go. We'll see on Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Obviously, massive news, but, you have a team that's, at the very least, somewhat shorthanded in one of the best matchups in the league against Detroit. They're playing at home. They're still big favorites. Just a ton of talk to talk about with Boston. They're going to be either, strong plays or potentially the whole team that's left is near must plays. It could kind of ruin the slate a little bit, I think, if Tatum and Brown ended up sitting out. But we'll see what Boston does with those 2 guys. On the Detroit side, we do know Quentin Grimes, Oscar Thompson already ruled out. Kate Cunningham and Simone Fontecchio, Fontecchio, you got this, are questionable to play. I think Cunningham will be in there, but again, we don't know this time of year. We'll get that news hopefully before the early lock. A lot to break down here, AP, obviously, with all the news. Boston has to be somewhat of a target and potentially a really, really strong target depending on how the news breaks. Break it down for us, Detroit and Boston, AP.
Yeah, so I mean that game, my big stand was being under on like Jordan Poole. I mean, this is what's funny. Like I get shit for playing Jordan Poole at like no ownership, and then when he's like 90% owned, I fade him or I'm under on him, and he nukes, and I get shit for being under on him. I played Cam Thomas over him.
That's how life, AP. You can't win. You can't win.
Yeah. But what's funny is Jordan Poole was incredible yesterday. Like, if you watch the game, it was a hilarious game. Like, it was so unorganized. I mean, the Wizards had offensive fouls like every other possession. But, like, Jordan Poole was actually pretty good, and they literally had a double. They had Drew Holiday on him, and then they were rotating, like, Tatum over on him. Like, and he played good. It's that dude is weird. He didn't play defense, but he played good offensively. So here's my take on what's going to happen. I think Tatum plays. So we just saw this like last week. It was on the road trip, Portland, Utah. It was a situation where they're able to, these scrub teams, easy wins for Boston where they can rest pieces. They did that, but Tatum played both games, played very well. He was awesome yesterday too. Only needed to play 26 minutes. And I think he plays because they pulled him out early too, early in the third quarter. I'm sure anyone that like locked Tatum, who was like 80% owned yesterday, was tilted by that. Because if he would have finished out the third quarter, he would have gotten you another 10 fantasy points. He would have had like 70. I mean, he was absolutely lights out. So I think Boston just plays at least Tatum. I kind of think Brown plays too, and they just get an easy win over the Pistons. But if that happens, so here's what I hope happens. I hope Brown and Tatum play. I hope they start like Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, and then maybe like a Brissett or Luke Cornett, and then let Pritchard come off the bench like we saw yesterday. What happens? Well, projection systems reset, and Pritchard, if he would have started yesterday, he would have been like 70, 80% owned. But since he was coming off the bench, projection systems just, think that his role is going to be, a bench role, and his minutes get reduced. And then his ownership went down to like 20%, which was insane to me because there was no way the Wizards were keeping that game close. I ended up locking Pritchard. It didn't matter. I'm going to lock him today. It doesn't matter. The Pistons suck. I think there's a good chance Cade sits because like the Pistons have nothing to play for. Monty, at one point in time, like hinted there's going to be spots where Cade sits and they let Marcus Sasser run the show. I think this is a spot where they do that because it's inevitable. They're going to lose this game no matter what. I'm sorry, Pistons fans. Boston could sit Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and I still think the Pistons lose this game, even if they play Cade. Like, that's just how Boston is right now. They're insanely good. So this is a key game, though. You wanna be able to, like, if Marcus Sasser starts, and Cade sits, I want to play Pritchard and Sasser together in the same lineup, and then Fontecchio. I think this is also really important because he's been pretty good. If he sits, it was Evan Fournier that was actually pretty good off the bench and hitting some shots. So as far as a punt value goes, I would be looking his way. Otherwise, I don't want to have – I don't think I would play Jaden Ivey. I think he'd be more of a tournament play. Same with Duren. This Boston team is so good. They blow teams out like left and right. And I do think Sasser, though, his minutes would definitely be safe.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I think about Pritchard too, Mangone, is they don't have any other point guards other than Derek White, right? So you'll see obviously Pritchard and White on the floor together. But I think even in a blowout, like Pritchard has to be on the floor. Just they still need a point guard out there, right, to bring the ball up the court. So I kind of think Pritchard is script proof, blowout proof, whatever you want to call it. So I'm with AP. I think Pritchard at 4,800. Even presumably coming off the bench is a really good play. Even if Tatum and Brown are both in there, I'm in on Pritchard. Derek White, I think, looks strong, and then we'll see obviously who else plays for Boston among Brown and Tatum. But clearly, an awesome spot here for the Celtics. How many is too many, and what are you doing with the Detroit side, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with this game is it's really hard to break down on handle. I agree with a lot of what AP said with the Pritchard stuff. Like, you can certainly play him. I also think he'd be a better play if we're kind of starving for this value because he won't pop up at all, right? It just depends what value that does decide to open up. I know I'm going to reference that a lot, but I think that does matter a ton. Detroit, obviously, if Cade Cunningham sits and like Sasser opens up, that'd be a really good play that you'd have to consider. Be good for Ivy and a lot of these other plays too. So a lot of unknowns with this game, but it's clearly going to be, I think, one of those like premier games on the slate. Like we always have certain games that like we kind of check off as like one of the most important ones. Like I thought that was Boston and Washington yesterday. I kind of think this is the most important game on the slate right now. So we're going to want to get exposure to it. The question is how, and based on how the news all shakes out is where we'll go. Because if Tatum and Brown are both out, right, we're just going to, shake it all up and have to play them. So, overall, it's a great game. I don't really know how to break it down because I don't have the plays. I don't know who's in and out. But you have to watch the news. That's why we talk about being in the Discord chat. We do have a new code going on right now if you guys care. It's March 15 for 15% off. Want to get in there? If you want to watch some basketball and enjoy all the sports, jump in there. Or if you just want to only do college basketball by itself, we have that as well. But if you're here to watch NBA, I'm sure you're not just here for college basketball. So, that's everything I got for this game, DC. It's really just, I don't know how to break it down unless you got any advice for me because I just think it's impossible.
No, but I feel bad for anyone who's only playing college basketball. That sounds like a miserable existence to me. So I do totally get it now that the tournament's happening. But come on, you got to get in more sports than college basketball. That's Detroit and Boston. Obviously, big news coming with the Celtics. Not exactly sure when we'll get that, but I do know for sure Up to Lock will be breaking down that news, giving their opinions. They'll be coming up for members right after this show's done at the top of the hour. Next game we'll talk about, it is the other game that locks at 7:30 Eastern time. It is Miami and Philadelphia. This one expected to be close. Philadelphia 1.5 favorites. Low total, though, sitting at 208. Kind of the status quo for Philadelphia. They'll be without DeAnthony Melton and, of course, Joel Embiid. The piece of news we're waiting for with Philly is Tobias Harris. Obviously, significant news there. He is questionable to play. I think legitimately questionable with an ankle injury. Did not participate in shoot-around this morning. My guess is that he sits this game out, which certainly makes Philadelphia a little bit more interesting. We'll see on that. And then on the Miami side, Kevin Love, Nikola Jovic are out. It is Jimmy Butler. Obviously, big news there. He is questionable to play in this one with a foot injury. He did sit out yesterday's game, so I think there's a decent chance that both Butler and Tobias Harris miss this game. If that happens, the low total kind of bad game environment here becomes much more interesting for DFS if we get the two forwards who obviously do a lot for their teams sitting out. We'll go back to you, AP, first. Miami and Philadelphia. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's really dependent on this news. I don't think Tobias plays. It was the same thing. He was questionable, missed shoot around the last game. He didn't play. Batum started in his place. He's 4.2K. I think he's going to make for a really good value. I think he played like 35-plus minutes in that game. Kyle Lowry revenge. I already saw that in the chat. The only interesting thing about Kyle Lowry is he had I was looking up potential assists, the passing stats that you typically look up, and I wasn't looking it up for Kyle Lowry. I was looking it up for DeJounte Murray, and I was looking over the last few games. Kyle Lowry popped up. I think it was like 13 or 14 potential assists. So the guy's is passing, creating opportunities, not shooting the ball much. If you're a revenge guy, I mean, maybe I can't get to Kyle Lowry on the slate, but if revenge is your thing, then yeah, go with it. This game is tough though. I hate playing players against the Heat. I will say, like spot shooters. So we were playing Fontecchio against Miami. Might be a good spot for a guy like Kelly Oubre. If he's hitting his shots, I think he could get there. But again, I want Tobias Harris out for sure. And I don't think like a lot of people are going to play Kelly Oubre on the slate at all. The one like weird thing is like Buddy Hield coming in. He came in like playing like 38 minutes a game initially with Philly, and then now he's basically riding the bench playing 18 to 20 minutes a game. So really a non-factor. just lose and run to Kelly Oubre. So this game is tough. We need the news on the Miami side. Same thing. Jimmy and Pat, like if he's in, I probably am just fading everyone here. If he's out, you upgrade, D-Rob. You upgrade Rozier a little bit. Jaquez, he played a lot of minutes in his start. He would be fine. And then Bam, too. Bam's role changes dramatically, and he's 8,700 and doesn't have to worry about Embiid on the other side. He has a much better matchup against the likes of Mo Bamba and Paul Reed. So I would have interest in Bam. But again, right now, as it stands, not a ton of interest in this game.
Yeah, obviously a ton depends on Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler here. And yeah, I think it's a sneaky good spot for Bam Adebayo if Butler ends up sitting. I like that matchup for him against Bamba and Paul Reed. What are your thoughts on this one, man, going Miami, Philadelphia?
Yeah, Butler misses. It's definitely a good spot for Bam Adebayo. I will call out, this is the infamous Jimmy Butler versus Tobias Harris, right? Where Jimmy Butler infamously said, you took Tobias Harris over me? Like, I mean, if Jimmy plays, don't ignore him in your MME formats. That's all I'm going to say, especially if Tobias is on the opposite side. Because I know Jimmy cares about games in April and May, but he hates Tobias Harris. So I think that's an interesting aspect. And if these guys play, you can make the case do you want to play Maxey when we know the price tag is up with Tobias then in? If Tobias is ruled in? No, probably not. So I actually kind of hope both these guys are just in. That way, for the most part, I can ignore this game unless it's a one-off option of a Jimmy Butler or maybe a Bam Adebayo. But I'm kind of hoping these guys are just in. That way I don't have to really play them. If they are missing, though, Tyrese Maxey at 8'6", he's going to have to be in play. Just the upside is too good there. Kelly Oubre, obviously he's been pretty good. You can make a case for him. Paul Reed at 5'6". Listen, Paul Reed at 5'6", he has a ceiling. The problem that I have is the matchup against Bam Adebayo, it's just not great, right? I don't think it's worth taking the stab on, but I'll just call that out. And then they are missing Jovic on the Heat side of the ball. So if they are missing Butler, there are still some good price tags on Jaime, on Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin. You could take chances on those guys. I think I'd prefer to maybe just use it as a spend for a Bam Adebayo. But if Jaime's starting at 5K and he's the facilitator, he is going to be a slam dunk kind of play. So not plays that we can completely ignore. We need the news on it. My hope is that just both guys are in and that I can kind of just stay away from this game.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do think if Butler or Harris in there, you can mostly move on from this game if you want to, especially given that we do have 8 games, pretty big slate, and potentially a lot of really good value depending on what Boston ends up doing. Let's move on to the lone 8 Eastern time game. It is Portland and Chicago. Another, I think, really interesting game for DFS. Chicago favored by 8.5 in this one, 213 total. Portland, the biggest piece of news is that Jeremy Grant is doubtful. He should be presumed out for this one. We've seen and out of nowhere, frankly, the DeAndre Ayton revenge tour, playing 40 minutes a night somehow and crushing most nights. I think he's an interesting discussion point. Simons, Banton, Henderson kind of in the backcourt with Brogdon and Shaedon Sharpe out for Portland. Obviously, Jeremy Grant probably out as well. And then on the Chicago side, a lot depends on their news as well. Kobe White, who's missed the last couple of games, is doubtful to play in this one. And then Alex Caruso is questionable. If both those guys were to miss, or even potentially one of them, I think Ayo Dosunmu is pretty interesting, coming off monster game, 55 fantasy points last time out against the Wizards. Another good matchup for him. You could look at DeRozan. You could look at Vucevic, I think, in this one as well. Obviously, does depend partly on that Caruso news, assuming Kobe White sits over here. I think the Caruso news is kind of sneaky big on this slate. AP, do you have a lean on him? And what are you doing with Portland and Chicago otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Caruso has to play if he can. They don't have many dudes at all with how tight the rotation is right now. This is a really interesting spot. So projections love Banton. Banton's been insane. Watched the last couple games. He was awesome against against the Pelicans, 41 minutes in back-to-back games. He had then 2 games where I think they spot started Scoot, and he only played like 19 or 20 minutes. And then he had that stretch where he played 38 and 42 against Houston and Toronto. So back-to-back games with 41 minutes, 20 field goal attempts, nice, peripheral stats. I mean, he checks a lot of boxes. I really respect Chicago's I hate attacking the Bulls with opposing backcourts. Like Ayo DeSumo, Alex Caruso, both good defenders. I mean, if you just look at it, like they've been pretty good at limited production against opposing point guards, shooting guards, etc. So I don't know. I'm a little torn. I think I think this is what happens. Like I think Simons, Ayton, and Banton, those are like the 3 plays that you consider. I struggle to touch anyone else. Kamara maybe, but really I think it's too thin. And it's like all 3 aren't going to crush. I mean, it's a 213 total. I do think they're intriguing plays. I think everyone leans on Banton. But, man, I'm just tempted to go back to Ayton. Like, I watched these games, and, like, the Pelicans did a really good job at limiting his attempts. And so it just became basically a Banton game. Simons, chucked a bunch. But, like, I think this is a matchup that Ayton could have a big game in. And just, like, looking back at a few matchups, like Miles Turner, I mean, he got it done against them. And, he's a guy that doesn't play too many minutes. Gafford almost put up 40, Draymond Green 50, John Collins 50. Sabonis got his 55. Like, I just think Ayton's going to make for a really interesting tournament play. Like, I'm just watching him play and how many minutes he plays and how involved he is right now. Like, and no one plays him. I played both Simons and Ayton the last slate that they're on. They're both 5% or lower ownership-wise. So until that changes, I'm definitely going to be getting shares. Banton's the one I'm torn on. I mean, I don't want to talk anyone off of him. I just think there's a lot of risk with this Blazers rotation as they're kind of developing these guys. Like, is Delano Banton going to continue to get 41 minutes, or are they going to pull something on us? And is he going to get 21 or 19? Like, we've seen it happen now a couple times. So I don't know. He grades out as a really good play. I'm just thinking, like, in tournaments, I'm trying to find ways to get a little bit different. He'll probably end up crushing me again, and it is what it is. On the Bulls side, Ayo, his role, we know it's locked in. I like this matchup. If Caruso misses, like, I think Ayo becomes a lock. And then I think this is a really good matchup for DeMar DeRozan. So, and I don't think a lot of people are going to click on DeMar DeRozan just because the box score, like his game logs, they don't look good at all outside of the OT game against Indiana. But I do really like this matchup for DeRozan.
Yeah, I think, kind of depending how the news breaks, man, going like Portland is it's weird to say, but they're playing right now like they kind of have like a big 3, right? It's Simons, Banton, and DeAndre Ayton are playing like 40 minutes a night each and all playing well. And, they're all, I wouldn't call them cheap, but like affordable. You can certainly play them together, I think. And then, especially if Caruso misses, which would really hurt the Bulls defense and would put more Bulls in play. Like, you have, I think, potential for kind of a sneaky good game here. I don't think a lot of people are going to go to the Blazers guys outside of Banton. So I'm interested in this game. Obviously it depends on other news, of course, but it's an interesting game for sure. Talk to us, man, going about the Trailblazers and the Bulls.
Yeah, listen, if Caruso's out, that's a huge piece of news because be huge for DeSumo, big for DeRozan and Vucevic. They'd all get really nice bumps. And honestly, someone else would, right? Like, I think Torrey Craig would be in the lineup, and then there'd be like another addition. And I think it'd be Dalen. It'd probably be Dalen Terry at 3-3. So it's a really big piece of news that we are waiting on. And I agree, their defense would fall apart. Let's just say Caruso's in. If Caruso is in for this game, I think it's really hard to ignore these plays, even though Caruso's in. Like, I think Vucevic, really good play. I think Caruso, 6'2", good play. I think DeSumo, 6'5", good play. They used to all have a huge ceiling. And I like to play these, like the Caruso and DeSumo types, when they're playing a team like Portland, where it's sloppy basketball, easier to get your stocks, like up and down, not a lot of defense played. It's just a really, really good spot. So I like these guys. one of the best plays on the slate at the moment right now is Delano Banton at 5.6K. It feels like a gross tag, but dude has a huge ceiling. If he's going to play 40 minutes a night, that's great. If you do run into the Portland Trailblazers just messing with minutes a little bit and you get the dud game, listen, he is going to be very chalky. I'm curious to see where his ownership goes because I think as news falls, ownership could go a lot more down on him or it could go more up because I think people would just be like, there's uncertain value, and I just think Banton's the best play. So that's a big piece that I'm looking at. And then DeAndre Ayton is the tough one. He is one of those guys that 8.2K, it's one of those price tags that just keeps going up. And you're like, how high can it get? Could it get to 9K and we feel like idiots that we're not playing him? That's the big debate. I think it's a good matchup against the Bulls. I don't totally hate it if he falls in as the last guy, but I think it'll make more sense if I have more value, right? Because then I'll have like more opportunities to spend up, and then I might land on him as more of that kind of contrarian piece. So that's kind of my overall takeaway on the Blazers. I should mention about Simons. I'm not super excited to play Simons. I think if Caruso's out, maybe I'd be a little more intrigued. But one counter argument is, obviously they're going to put all their attention on Simons over Banton and Ayton. And that's one reason why I think Simons is down on my list here in this spot. And the price tag is up. If you told me Simons or Ayton, pick one or the other, as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to say DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, makes sense to me. A lot does depend on that Caruso news. Any chance that Caruso sits, they start Drummond? I don't think so in this matchup, given what Portland is likely to start. They're not playing anything close to a second traditional big. So I would still expect Drummond to come off the bench in that scenario, but obviously don't know that for sure. We'll have to see what Chicago ends up doing. But, yeah, don't overlook Portland and Chicago. Could potentially be a very good DFS game depending on the news. Let's go to Minnesota and Utah next. This one, 9 p.m. Eastern time game. It is the only game that does lock at that time. We do have a very spread out slate tonight, a bunch of different lock times. This one at 9 p.m. Eastern time, it is Minnesota favored by 5.5, 223 total. Obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns remains out for Minnesota, but Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson also questionable to play. Obviously, very significant news there on the Wolves side. Monty Morris questionable. That's less significant, but still notable. And then on the Utah side of the ball, looks like Jordan Clarkson will remain out. Did they bench Keontae George? He played fewer minutes, I think, last time a little bit anyway. I think he had some – the Utah coach is just kind of off the rails in what he says about his players, by the way. But anyway, he's got them to respond to some degree. And then Lauri Markkanen, also questionable to play. He's missed a decent amount of time, hasn't played in over 2 weeks. Last game he was in there was March 2nd, so we'll see on Markkanen. I would assume somewhat limited minutes if he does return, but we shall see if he's in the lineup or not. Kind of a theme here, obviously, AP. Just a lot depends on the news for Minnesota and Utah with the Markkanen news. But do your best to break down this game for us, Wolves and Jazz.
Yeah, so Gobert, I believe, made shoot around. Yeah, so there's a good chance that he plays, gets a little revenge. He hasn't had a hashtag revenge type of game against his former team. I think I looked it up just because I was curious. I think the one time he went for over 40 fantasy points, and he only hit 41. But with Karl-Anthony Towns out, obviously that role has changed a little bit. So, like, if anyone caught this game, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, I mean, it was like prime, like Shaq Kobe, just like they absolutely destroyed, dismantled, embarrassed this Jazz team. It was not close. They got whatever they want. I think Edwards had like 66 fantasy points. Naz Reid had in the 50s. So obviously Naz can't play him coming off the bench at 7,300. He's going to have a big role here, but it's just, man, that's very risky. Can Rudy Gobert kind of emulate what Naz Reid did? I don't think so. So they're like games are so much different. Gobert just down there in the paint. Naz Reid can kind of stretch the floor more. Gobert's not going to do that. So Gobert's more of a, hey, get some blocks, get a double-double, and hopefully you hit 50, which I think he could. I definitely think he could. I don't trust this spot. They signed, when did they sign TJ Warren? I can't remember when, but he got like 12 minutes, 14 minutes, or no, 16 minutes, was 1 for 7 from the field, which I thought, pretty wild. But like if Kyle Anderson is out, you're going to see like this game is going to get out of hand. I don't see the Jazz keeping it close. The Jazz, absolute cheeks right now. They're a disaster. I'm not playing them. They're playing a 10-man rotation, so I just can't go there. Even that game when Talon Horton-Tucker was chalk, and it was just like projections were forcing him in. I was manually trying to take him out because I'm like, they don't like this guy. And I ended up being a donkey and playing him anyway, just because he projected so good. But it's just like, I'm not playing anyone on the Utah side unless they are absolutely like a free square. But I don't see any free squares anymore. Like Lauri Markkanen, he's 7,900. Like I'm not playing him there. Keontae George is almost 6K or 7K. I'm not playing him. So the Jazz, easiest fade on the slate. Anthony Edwards now priced up 10K. I just can't get there. I think this game gets out of hand. I think Kyle Anderson, Gobert play. I think this game just ends up being messy. The one guy, though, Kyle Anderson, you could play him if he's in, and then Rudy Gobert, maybe a couple shares, but I don't love it.
Yeah, Josh says Markkanen out. I haven't seen that news. I don't know about you guys if I missed it somewhere, but I have not seen that myself. Matt Golden, let's go over to you. Minnesota, Utah, where do you sit on this game?
Yeah, Minnesota, Utah is definitely an interesting game. I don't know if I'm for sure going to prioritize the backload for this. I don't think it's necessary to, but if you fall into it, it's definitely nice. Obviously, Naz Reid, yeah, he's still a good play at 7-2, but he is still 7-2 or 7-3, sorry. So, it's not someone that I'm going to build around, prioritize. I think Ant Edwards is good regardless. Rudy in or out, it doesn't matter. When it comes to this Utah side of the ball, I'm not super excited about rostering anyone here. I think Lauri could be back in today. And I think this is a tough spot to kind of get to these options. So I'm going to stay away from the Utah side. I don't love the matchup. Minnesota, like I said, Ant is in play. Naz Reid could definitely be in play. And honestly, some of these other options could pop. Like if told me Kyle Anderson and Rudy were out, has to be bumped to guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and some of these other options. So it's news to wait on, but I don't think it's news to prioritize and backload for. That's kind of how I'll handle it. Yes, it's a bigger slate than we've had in past slates where there is more there's more games later on, so you'll have pivots later, but I just don't think this is a game to prioritize. I think, again, Ant's a good play. I think if Rudy's in, I think he's a good play, and if Rudy's out, you can make a case for someone like Naz Reid, but that's really it for me.
Yeah, to me, Naz Reid is kind of close to worth waiting for. If Gobert is out, I think Naz Reid has another monster game against this team with Towns out, obviously. And then if Gobert's sat, we saw it once. He would have played even more minutes in that game if it wouldn't have been a blowout, I believe. So, yeah, I'd be in on Naz Reid for sure, assuming I have the roster spot available if Gobert does sit. And
but would you prioritize it, DC? Would you pass up on some early news, even though you don't know the news, but would you pass up on it for waiting? I just don't think you would, just because he's not 5'6", right? He's still 7'3", where if he got you 44, of course I'd sign up for that, but it's not going to win me the slate.
Yeah, I'm not going to say for sure. Obviously, depends on some of that news, but there is still three games after this. It's not like you can't find a way to pivot off Naz Reid.
Yeah,
leave yourself a 2v2 or something.
Jalen Johnson is an easy pivot too. So he's 7,500. You go right to him.
Yeah. So,
or I guess you'd need 200 more. So if you had the salary, you could make that. You could make that work.
I am going to try to leave a spot for Naz Reid and leave a 2v2 or even a 1v1 if I have to do that. I just think it's an awesome spot for Naz Reid if Gobert's out, and he'll be lower owned than he should be in that scenario because this is the 5th game of the night. Some people will be locked into the lineup. Some people won't change them, whatever it may be. So, yeah, me personally, I do want to leave a spot for Naz Reid in the event that Gobert does miss this game. Let's get to the later games. There's 2 at 10 Eastern time. First one we'll talk about is Memphis and Sacramento. Looks like Sacramento should be just about fully healthy for this one. They are missing Trey Lyles, who's going to be out for a while. But other than that, they do have pretty much everybody healthy. Memphis, on the other hand, is missing a ton of dudes. Obviously, the longer-term injuries to Morant and Marcus Smart and Adams trade, and Clark remains out. But they're also joined by Watanabe, who's going to miss this game. Lamar Stevens is out. Scottie Pippen is out. Luke Kennard is out. And Vince Williams, perhaps most importantly, is also going to miss this game against the Kings. Memphis has got the kind of the usual skeleton crew that they've had all year long. Should be Goodwin starting at point guard. I feel pretty confident in that. They did get Desmond Bane back. Last game, he played, 32 minutes? Kind of surprising he got so many minutes after missing, 3 months. So Bane back. And played pretty good in that first game back. 17 shot attempts, 7 assists. He should have a big role here against the Kings. I think he's interesting at 8,200. I think that Memphis potentially has they're one of their second best player back, or maybe third best, in Desmond Bane. Interested to hear your thoughts on Bane, AP, and obviously talk about the rest of Memphis and Sacramento as well.
Yeah, I think this is by far the most interesting spot for tournaments on the slate. I think if the game stays close, like when you look at Bane, I thought he looked awesome. I watched that game bits and pieces, then I went back and rewatched the on YouTube. They have like a 10-minute, sped up version that you can go and watch. And I mean, OKC, the Grizzlies were right in that game and kind of just let it slip. And they had Lou Dort on Desmond Bane the whole time. And I still thought Bane looked pretty good. 7 for 17, almost 40 DK points in 32 minutes with Lou Dort on you all game long. I mean, like your first game back, I thought that was impressive. This matchup tonight, massive upgrade. I can't remember. I don't have my notes right up in front of me, but I think it's like Jalen Brunson and a few other point guards, absolutely nuked against the Kings. It's such a great matchup for a guy like Bane and how he plays. I think the opportunity is going to be there, and I think he pushes like 34, 36 minutes just from what I saw, mainly in the second half. If you look at his rotation in the second half, when that game was tight, he was in playing heavy minutes. So I think it's a great shot to take a chance on Bane. He's going to have all the usage. Playing with a bunch of scrubs, and then Jaren Jackson. Actually, GG Jackson, I can't really call him a scrub. He's been pretty good. But just look at their bench, too. Like, I actually don't think Jordan Goodwin starts. Like, they got their point guard in Bane. I think he's going to run the offense, and everything's just going to rotate around him and Jaren Jackson. And I think when these guys are playing, I think they're playing to win. There's not really much to tank for right now, and you want to keep your stars in it and playing, competitive ball. I think that's what we're seeing right now. I got a single game parlay bet that I placed for a little bit of money, but you take Bane over point prop, over 3.5 3-pointers, and then the Grizzlies money line pays out quite a bit of money. I think it was like 1,200 or plus 1,200 or something like that. I got a little bit of that action going tonight. I like the Grizzlies. I love this spot in tournaments for Bane. And then as far as run backs go, I think it's a great spot for Keegan Murray. I think in that price range, people are going to look at a few different plays. So like someone in the chat mentioned Taylor Hendricks. Again, not maybe like a bad play, but I just don't trust the Jazz right now. But a really chalky play is going to be Precious, a game that we're going to talk about here soon. I don't necessarily trust Precious's role right now, especially in this matchup against the Warriors. I know there's obviously going to be a tight rotation there, an injury situation, but I think Keegan Murray, the better play, doesn't absorb a lot of salary there too. You can always go to Sabonis. The one thing I will say is I was really impressed with what the Grizzlies did against the OKC backcourt. You don't typically see teams limit, SGA, Giddey, and those guys, and the Grizzlies did an awesome job. So I'm under on Fox. Obviously, Sabonis just is always in play, it seems like. Tough matchup against Jaren Jackson. But I think Keegan Murray is the guy that I'm going to be pairing kind of a little in-game correlation with Desmond Bane tonight.
In the interest, AP, and playing a couple of the main Memphis guys. It does seem like their success and minutes could be correlated. Bane and Jaren Jackson in particular, right? It looks like I didn't see that game, but looking at the data, it looks like the offense ran through 3 people: Bane, Jaren Jackson, and then Luke Kennard, but he's out tonight. So it would seem like, that Bane-Jackson combination could potentially hook up for multiple 3-pointers. I mean,
yeah, I like that. And it was kind of weird because they started Bane, Conchar, Gigi Jackson, Santi, and Jaren at the 5. They're going to need Jaren to keep Sabonis in check. So I kind of like that. But just salary-wise, it might be difficult to play both unless you're full game stacking it. The other guy, though, in that stack, like for three players, is Harrison Barnes. Someone in the chat mentioned it, reminded me. I think Mangone's going to like this play. And look, I hate Harrison Barnes. I think he's out of the doghouse, though. 3 games in a row now, over 30 minutes. He's actually producing. He's not just running wind sprints, double-digit field goal attempts. Last 3 games, the usage rate has spiked up too. So Harrison Barnes should grade out as a fine play.
All right, Harrison Barnes call never has backfired in the history of DFS. So you, Mango, what do you got?
Never has backfired.
Memphis and Sacramento.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't go on record touting up Harrison Barnes. I did see him popping up a little bit today, and I was just like, not today, Satan. It's not the worst play on the planet, but
for the record, just so the record's straight, I touted Desmond Bane and Keegan Murray. And then the chat reminded me about Harrison Barnes, so the record's straight.
No, you definitely did. I saw you talking in the Discord a lot about Desmond Bane today. The Barnes stuff, listen, so I noticed that he was in play today, but I glossed over it and said, we're going to get better value. I don't have to worry about this. So that's my hope, at least. So I'm doing my best to avoid that. But I understand the play. I saw people talking about Keon Ellis in the chat, and I'm just not completely sold on the Keon Ellis thing at 3.5K. If he was shooting guard eligible, which shooting guard isn't a fun spot to roster, I think you could make a case for that. Also, another reason to maybe play Desmond Bane is shooting guard eligible. And again, I hate playing shooting guards a lot of the time, so you could make a case for that as a contrarian tournament play. I do like De'Aaron Fox. I pretty much like him on almost any slate. The only downside is I want him in a competitive game. So yeah, against Memphis, it might not be as competitive. That could be one of the downsides because you get that fourth quarter closeout where he just does everything. Sabonis at 10.5. My only issue with that is I just don't think I want to spend my money at the center position on someone like Sabonis. And if I am spending at center, I think I'd rather spend on Anthony Davis, who's in that later game. And we did just get some news where Tobias Harris is out. So that's obviously going to be – it's not nothing. I'm not saying I'm jamming Sixers, but it's definitely something for sure. And where people say that Keon Ellis is a great value, I don't get it. The reason why I don't get it is no one is currently out right now. That's the issue that I'm having is we don't have anyone out on this Kings team. They're all in. And if he's starting, sure, you can make a case that any 3.5K guard is probably a pretty good option as a starter. My only concern is he's more of a defensive guy. You can make the case Memphis, yes, it's a decent matchup where it can get sloppy, but there's routes where Kevin Huerter closes over him. I know everyone's just assuming that Kevin Huerter is dusted, not good again, but there's routes where they bench him, right? There's routes where they go, let's say maybe they decide to play no Harrison Barnes as the closeout guy, and then they play Keon Ellis, or maybe they play Barnes, Murray, and Huerter, or maybe they don't play Huerter and then they play Monk. There's just a lot of ways it can go wrong from the closeout perspective. Yes, I understand there are guys out that can help him on the bench, but I'm just saying I don't think it's a guarantee that with 6 minutes left, he is closing the game. That is my biggest concern with someone like Keon Ellis. And another counterpoint is this slate, I think, is going to have a lot of really good value where this is not a value play that I think will be worth gambling on. That's just kind of my overall thoughts. I think we're going to get a lot of good value.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. It's an interesting game there between Memphis and Sacramento. The Memphis side growing on me a little bit, and it was mentioned in chat, we have seen Sabonis just dominate Memphis. 2 games this year, averaging 61 fantasy points, and crazy, 23.5 rebounds per game in those 2 games against Memphis, I think against a similar front court that he'll face today. So, yeah, Sabonis kind of makes sense. And that game stack looks kind of tasty, obviously, depending on some of the news that breaks. Let's get through these last 2 games, and we'll go back, visit Philadelphia now that we have the news that Tobias Harris is out. But first, let's talk about New York and the Golden State Warriors. It is this game's projected to be close. Yeah, Warriors favored by 6.5, 211 total. We do know OG Anunoby going to sit out for the Knicks, so we should be back to 46-minute Josh Hart in this one, all the way down to 39 minutes in that last game. He's somewhat interesting to me. 7,200 prices come down a little bit. We've seen Jalen Brunson have some monster performances lately, and we know what the Knicks do. They ride their starters into the ground. Nothing going to change tonight against the Warriors in that regard, I don't think. On the Golden State side, they are mostly healthy, it looks like. Still have Klay Thompson coming off the bench. Steph Curry returned last game, had a pretty big game, 51 fantasy points in 34 minutes against the Lakers. We do have the Steph Curry whisperer in chat. He says he's going for 53 real points tonight. So if you believe random dude in chat, there you go. AP, let's go to you. Golden State and New York Knicks. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Knicks are playing like 1980s basketball right now. Like, the totals are just insane. That rarely hitting like 200 plus. But the usage that Jalen Brunson has is just insane. And so, like, he's in play because he's taking like 20, 30 shots a game. And the matchup for him is fine. So at 9K, I think he's a solid play. And then, yeah, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, I definitely trust those 3. I think like between Hartenstein and Precious, matchup-wise, it does seem better for Precious. He's grading out very well. Looks to be one of the more popular plays on the slate. They got Boyan, and there's these – I feel like there's these matchups that Thibs is going to – kind of lean on a guy like Boyan. It just seems naturally like the Warriors would be a decent spot to do that. He played 30 against Atlanta and 30 against Cleveland with this team, and then 24 minutes 2 days ago against the Kings. I mean, it's such a dirty play. I'm not saying like go there. I'm like to myself, I'm like, do I really want to like lock in and jam in Precious? The opportunity when you're playing with Jalen Brunson is just limited. Look at the games that Precious went off in. I'm pretty sure that Brunson was out. And so there was more opportunity there. For Precious to crush, it's going to have to be easy opportunities, which is tough to get against the likes of Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga. So I just worry about that chalk. That's why I like Keegan Murray over him in the other game that we talked about. On the Warriors side, I'm not messing with the Warriors. I mean, Chef Curry is 8,800. If he goes off, he goes off. We can't play everyone. I just don't like the Warriors rotation right now. I don't like the matchup against the Knicks. I don't think it's a good environment, and they've been extremely good against opposing point guards, one of the best in the league. So I'll be off Chef tonight. If Chef beats me, he beats me. I move on to tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not on the Warriors tonight, and frankly, probably won't end up on that many Knicks either unless some news breaks and you got to pivot or whatever it may be. What about you, man? Where do you stand on Warriors Knicks tonight?
Yeah, Warriors Knicks is not a game I love. I think Jalen Brunson's fine as a spend at the guard spot. I think Precious Achiuwa, it's definitely a value that people are getting on right now. I'm not totally sold on it. There's other values that I prefer right now, so I think that he's okay, but he's not going to be someone that I prioritize. And I think the Warriors overall with Steph back, it's just a really tough spot to get to. If you want a contrarian guard up at the top for like 8.8K, sure, Steph Curry can pop off for a big game. The problem is there's a lot of variance to his games. You could also get that like 30-point game, and it's just absolutely brutal. I don't think it's necessary to do that, so I'm going to stay away. If I play a spend-up guard, I would much prefer to go to De'Aaron Fox over Steph Curry. So if the Steph Curry whisperer wants to slide into DMs and make a head-to-head bet, I'd be in. But my whole take on Steph Curry is it's really simple. If you want a guy that has a huge ceiling that's going to be low owned at your guard spot, then play Steph Curry. that's just it. That's the equation, and that's how we have to handle it right
All right, that's New York, Golden State. Let's get to the last game of the night. It does lock at its own time, 8:30, 10:30 Eastern time. The Lakers and the Atlanta Hawks. Lakers favored by 9 in this one, 225 total, which is actually a pretty high number in the in the second half of the NBA this season. It's crazy how much the totals have gone down from the beginning of the year. The Lakers side, we do know Christian Wood, Cam Reddish going to be out. Anthony Davis and LeBron James both listed questionable in this one. Anthony Davis exited the last game 2 days ago after just 12 minutes with an eye injury. Looks like he's going to be able to play, is the news. So I would expect Davis to be in there, and frankly, I would expect LeBron to be in there as well. So the Lakers should be fairly close to a full squad here. On the Hawks side, of course, still without Trae Young, without Okongwu he's questionable. He could be back for this one, which would change things a little bit with their center rotation, but they will be without Saddiq Bey and AJ Griffin for this game. So still pretty thin on the wing, regardless of who plays for Atlanta. AP, and a good matchup for really both teams here. Should be a good game environment. What do you see between the Hawks and the Lakers, AP?
Yeah, so a little late night hammer. DeJounte Murray, I was like watching that game last night. I was so impressed with the Hawks. They're obviously coming, on this road trip. It's been pretty tough coming off a bunch of losses. But man, they looked good. They're passing. The Clippers had no answers. DeJounte was hitting threes. Jalen Johnson was incredible. Clint Capella was insane. He absolutely owned Zubac down in the paint. And they just didn't stop, and they looked hungry. They looked like a really good basketball team in that moment. You've seen them look really bad though too, which is crazy, and that's why the Lakers are favored by 9. I wish our boy Steve Boynton was hounding me. He's in Vegas, and I guess him and his guys booked another trip, and he's just texting me over and over getting a pick, and there was one game left, and I'm like, I don't. In my mind, I'm like, who freaking knows? The Clippers were favored by 9.5. But I'm like, I can't take LAC. I can't, LAC given 9.5 right now with how they're playing. No way. We took the Hawks. I wish I would have given that bet out. It's the same situation. I don't trust the Lakers favored by 9 points right now. I love how Atlanta looked last night. I think they cover and maybe steal a win. I might be parlaying the Grizzlies and Hawks, which gives you 22-1 or something like that. Or I got to go and look it up what it was.
Count me in on the Grizz.
I know. Yeah, I got to look it up. There's probably better odds out there, but I like that quite a bit. So yeah, Anthony Davis, so he left in the first quarter. This is an island game. So again, it's a smash spot for bigs like Anthony Davis. He could put up a monster number. I think you go with Sabonis, a little bit safer, about the same price tag. I think it's a safer play, and it looks like AD may be getting more projected ownership right now, which I don't really understand. Obviously, if AD sits, then it's a great spot for LeBron, and then one of D'Lo or Austin Reeves. But again, I'm not going to sit and wait around. It's an island game. There's a lot of other really good plays on the Hawks side. It is tough. The one thing that's limiting DeJounte Murray's upside in DFS, for DFS, is he's not getting the rebounds right now because Clint Capella is playing so good, and then Jalen Johnson is just snagging rebounds as well. So that's what's limiting his upside. You need him to have a really big raw scoring night to get there. He could definitely do it with how he plays. The assist potentials are definitely there. He's leading the league over the last 4 games in assist potentials. So you need a big raw scoring game, and you need him to dish out 12 or 13 dimes, which he definitely could against the Lakers. But that 9,800 price tag is definitely tough. So he's going to be a contrarian play for sure tonight. Bogdanovich is the other matchup guy, but 6,600, Bogdanovich rarely ever gets there. I probably won't be getting there tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking at mostly DeJounte Murray, man, going. I know it's expensive at 9,800, but point guards absolutely cooked the Lakers. They give a ton of 3 balls to the point guard, and if you look at DeJounte Murray, his style of play has completely changed with Trae Young. He's had double-digit three-point attempts in 5 straight games now, has the ball in his hands constantly. And with the big win yesterday, only played 34 minutes. So I'm not too worried about the back-to-back with DeJounte Murray. I like him a ton here. And on the other side, I mean, Anthony Davis, assuming he's in there, his opposing centers have just destroyed the Hawks. So assuming, he can see and all that, I kind of like him too. So fun game here to end the slate. What do you got for us, man, going Lakers and Hawks?
Yeah, it's definitely a fun game for sure. I can see this going anyway. Like I can see the Hawks blowing out the Lakers. I can see the Lakers blowing out the Hawks. I do assume that just AD and LeBron both play. If you are, for some reason, worried about AD or LeBron sitting, what you could do is you could just plug in LeBron or AD and then just leave the $100, right? Put LeBron in first and then put it at the util spot rather than the center or the small forward or power forward. It's an idea. I'm not saying that's how you have to do it, but if it kind of falls in place and you wanted to play one of these guys, I don't hate it. Obviously, it'd be a huge boost if one of them are out. I like AD the most if I had to pick one. I love attacking Atlanta with opposing big men. It didn't work out last night with Zubac. I'll admit the Clippers, it just seemed like a very off game. And even Paul George was saying that we don't have an identity and we don't want it enough. It just seemed like an off night for the Clippers. It is what it is. I like AD. I think he's a really good spend that you should be considering here on this slate. Atlanta, though, I just think with the back-to-back, night in LA, I don't know. I don't need to get these guys at their price tags. There's no price tags that are super appealing right now to me. I think there's going to be better plays in the slate. So the only thing I'm looking to play right now is Anthony Davis or LeBron as a spend-up option. And then we did just get news from Steven. He said Butler is out. So got Butler missing. We got Harris missing. We also got an update that Brown and Tatum are both still questionable for that game. We'll see what that news is. Obviously, we'll know in probably like an hour or so. But that's why I got to get in the Discord chat. Super important. That's why I got to watch the Up the Lock show. They're going to break it all down. All this news, they're going to discuss it. And we're going to have to like some of these Heat options for sure. I'm sure you're going to want to consider Bam Adebayo even more now with Jimmy Butler out, DC.
Yeah, I think Adebayo gets a bump. Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, as AP mentioned.
Are we sure Butler's out?
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen anything either.
I see it. I see it, but it just depends. There's a lot of different sources, but this one source.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Maybe he's got a secret source. We don't have AP. We gotta find out.
Oh, okay. Well, he's probably looking at beat writers. I was just looking at Underdog. Ira
Winderman tweeted it out just now. I just looked it up, and I get, maybe it's dumb, but I get Underdog notifications and I get Fantasy Labs. I get both. I know one is normally slower than the other, but sometimes I miss things, right? So I just want to both push. So hey, that's where
it sounds like he's out. People confirming in the chat. You're confirming.
Yeah.
So yeah,
no
no Harris. We are out of time here. We do, of course, the Up to Lock show coming up momentarily. But before we get out, we will do the plays of the day. We will go to you first, AP, for your gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go Desmond Bane. I like this game. I think the Grizzlies keep it close. I think it's going to be competitive there against the Kings. I know tough to beat the Kings in Sacramento, but I've been kind of under on this team all season, and they're these games that they should win a little bit closer than what we've seen typically.
I'm going to join you on the Grizzlies train and do a little mini stack there. Jaren Jackson Jr. I think it's going to be a lot of Bane, a lot of Jackson Jr. We know the upside that he has. Certainly some downside guarding Sabonis for chunks of this game, but I do think he's a good bet for 50+, and I do think he'll be lower owned too at 8,400. So I'll go with Jaren Jackson Jr. as the Mom's Basement play of the day. Let's go over to you for the Sweet Travis play of the day.
All right, I'm going to a guy that could end up being chalky, but hey, it's before the news. I don't know what to tell you. I'll play him if Caruso's in or if he's out. If he's out, I'll definitely slam him. It's Ayo Dosunmu. He's a flowchart play, so I'm sure AP will give it a stamp of approval as well. And I think Dosunmu gets a really good spot. People think 6.5K is a lot. It's not. He should be higher owned than I'm seeing right now.
All right. Ayo Dosunmu, Jaren Jackson, and Desmond Bane, your plays of the day. Up to Lock show starting momentarily for members. You can join the winner circle with promo code MARCH15. That'll get you 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. This show will return tomorrow, same time, same place. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. For Mangone, for AP, I'm DC, and we're out of here.